Hey guys, in this podcast, I have a very special treat for you. Attorney Brian Green is joining us, and he's going to cover the latest litigation efforts to push back on some of the Trump immigration changes. Watch this video all the way until the end, and certainly be sure to subscribe to this channel before you go today and hit that notification bell. Attorney Brian Green, welcome to McBean Immigration TV.
Thank you. It's my pleasure to be here.
Now, what folks won't know is that we met a few years ago because we worked together. We worked together on, I believe it was a mandamus, maybe one or two mandamus actions for cases that were moving way too slowly with immigration. And for those who don't know you or who are unfamiliar with your work, just share with us a little bit about who you are and what type of immigration law and litigation you've been working on over the past umpteenth years.
I've been practicing for 24 years now, and I have a different background than most immigration attorneys. I started off working for a state court judge in Pennsylvania. Then I was a public defender in West Virginia. So I got a lot of trial time in front of juries and judges. Then I moved on to immigration and did immigration law from 2007 until 2019. And in part of that, I was the main litigator for the law firm I was at. But in 2019, I went solo. The last 6 years, I've been doing exclusively U.S. District Court litigation involving immigration cases. And I sue CBP, State Department, DHS, USCIS. I'm only doing those lawsuits involving immigration. I've done 3,000 since 2019.
Terrific. That's amazing. You know, you've been doing a lot of exciting things over the years. And fast forward to 2025, January, when Trump 2.0 started. And, you know, we knew it was going to be bad. Obviously, we knew we were up for a major challenge, but did you actually think you would be litigating the issues that you've been litigating over the past few months? Did you see this coming?
I did. I thought I'd be doing habeas cases, but I thought Trump 2.0 was really going to try to deport a lot of people. I just didn't think I'd be doing it. So I kind of expected to be doing habeas here, but I wasn't expecting to be doing habeas around the whole country.
But for those who are unfamiliar with habeas, how would you actually explain what a habeas action is?
Basically, is a lawsuit challenging the detention of someone. So if someone is being held on a criminal law charge, immigration law charge, a habeas is a way to ask a judge, a federal judge, to make sure that you are being held properly for the right reason. You can challenge the conditions that you're being held under. But for immigration, you're really arguing, hey, you can't deport me or you can't hold me. It's a pace that is neck breaking. If someone's going to get deported that night, you file in the afternoon and you get an order from the judge within an hour or two saying you can't deport this person, and then they have a hearing 2 or 3 days later. So the change, I think, is the speed and the amount of people that need help.
Absolutely. And so you were saying that with Trump's mass deportation agenda that we all knew about, because he talked about it extensively during the campaign trail, we were expecting, okay, we're going to file these habeas nationwide, right? All across the country, challenging the unlawful detention of individuals. But then other things happened. Well, for some of us, we didn't really think it was going to happen so quickly. The attack quickly turned to students, to international students. It started, I think, with Mahmoud Khalil, the green card holder who was detained, I would say unlawfully, by ICE in Louisiana for a few months until a judge ordered that he be released to challenge his immigration removal action at home with his wife and new baby. And so things just spiraled out of control a little bit after the Mahmoud Khalil issue.
Yeah, it started like the first week of April, around April 5th or something. And what we saw was panicked students emailing lawyers saying that their designated school official, the person at the university or college that is in charge of student documents and status, they were getting emails from their school saying, hey, your SEVIS has been terminated. You are no longer allowed to stay in the country. You have to leave. Really cryptic emails with no expectation is going to happen. So at that point, the lawyers started to get these calls. And I had people in Erie, Pennsylvania, which is really crazy because that's where I clerked for my judge. I had students there that were disenrolled. I had people in Washington, D.C., and then I started to do the cases nationwide. So what we found out through the litigation process is that ICE had come up with an idea where they were going to use either an algorithm or maybe using, person power, but they were going to use the FBI's NCIC database. And it's not a database that's perfect. It basically tracks everyone that's had some kind of contact with the U.S. criminal enforcement of, with police, FBI, anybody. But anyone that had contact with law enforcement, they basically pooled them and they did batch terminations in sevis. And they also asked the State Department to revoke visas by batches. What eventually happened was maybe 5,000 or 8,000 students were terminated in sevis. They were in an area of uncertainty. They didn't know, can I finish my semester? Can I go work on my OPT period? Do I have to leave the country? Some of them had visas that were canceled. Luckily, some of them were in the US long enough that their visas had expired on their own. So they didn't have any State Department problems, but they were all really stressed out. Some of them left the country, but most of them joined lawsuits. And we did group lawsuits where we would have 20, 30, 40 people in a lawsuit. And the judges were irate. The judges, Judge Walton, especially Reggie B. Walton in Washington, D.C., really pushed back on DHS and ICE saying that you're not doing this properly. And our lawsuits requested temporary restraining orders. I think we ended up with like 110 TROs around the country that were approved. I think there were only 2 that were denied. And basically the judges issued orders saying that you cannot deport these people. You cannot give them a notice to appear in immigration court, and you have to reinstate them. And all the students that stayed in the country, they all were reinstated. My clients were able to finish their semesters. They graduated. A number of them were changing status from F1 to H1B. So they were worried that they would get an RFE in August or September saying, show us that you're still in status. So ultimately it was all resolved, but it was a bare power grab by the Trump administration to go after people that had some criminal law exposure. And my first client, I won't say her name, but she was a victim of domestic battery. She was arrested but never charged. And she got a letter from the U.S. Attorney's Office in D.C. saying, hey, there is no basis for us to charge you. And that's the same office that defended these lawsuits in Washington, D.C. So I had the perfect plaintiff, someone who was a victim, not a criminal, and she was a graduate student, was applying for H-1B. So her case got resolved. Everyone else's cases got resolved. But we're not seeing the government really pay the attorney's fees. It's more that people got put back in the situation they should have been, but they're not getting reimbursed for the $2,000 they paid on their group lawsuits.
Right. Earlier you said 5,000 to 8,000 students received that cryptic email from the government. And apparently those 5,000 to 8,000 individuals were somehow connected to some sort of criminal matter. And some people who are watching this or listening to it might think, wait a minute, so many international students are getting in trouble with the law. And of course, the Trump administration was right to go after them. I mean, after all, the government, they made it clear that they wanted to go after criminal aliens. And so here you have a bunch of criminal aliens. What's wrong with going after them? But from my understanding, some of these individuals, well, you've mentioned your client who was a victim of domestic violence, of battery, who was arrested in that circumstance. But from what I understand, other people who had very minor issues, like maybe, I don't know, speeding tickets or parking violations, were also somehow caught up in this. Did you see any of that as well?
Yeah. So in the Erie, Pennsylvania, I had 2 students. I think one might have had a disorderly conduct charge. So they might have been out at a bar and left the bar at 2:00 and was being too loud. But many of the people that got caught up in this, they were cited, like you were saying, with speeding or something, or they were maybe given a misdemeanor arrest, but they were never prosecuted. So they didn't have any convictions. In America, you're innocent until you're convicted. Right. So these people did not have convictions. And if they even had a conviction, it would have been a misdemeanor. And the State Department and USCIS and ICE, they have regulations that they actually promulgated, regulations they created themselves, saying when a criminal conviction is serious enough to cancel a visa or to put you out of status, you're charged with murder. they actually aren't really supposed to do anything until you're convicted. But when you're convicted, at that point, if it's a crime of violence, if it's crime involving moral turpitude, if you meet the standard for a serious enough crime, what they do is they give you a notice to appear in immigration court, and an immigration judge decides whether or not you should be removed from the country. We used to call it deportation, now it's removal. So the majority of these students weren't convicted of anything or weren't convicted of anything serious enough to have an immigration problem. But anyone that had a citation, an arrest, that was enough. My client was arrested. She was released as a victim. The police arrested her just in case. They questioned her, and when they saw the injuries and listened to her explanation, like, yeah, you're not going to be charged with a crime. So you're right. I think the majority of people that were caught in this were not guilty of anything serious enough. Some people did have charges for driving under the influence or driving while intoxicated. That is serious enough to cancel your visa. Mm-hmm. But if you plead guilty to reckless driving, that's not enough to affect your student status. So this was a very sloppy way of getting as many people and trying to basically just intimidate them to leave the country. And the judges saw it, and ICE had to back away from what they were doing.
Exactly. I think you used the right word there, intimidation. And we saw the intimidation tactics, of course, with the Mahmoud Khalil debacle and other students who participated in political protests. The State Department started to all of a sudden crack down on those individuals and put out this campaign of, I think, fear that if you protest, the way that I view it, it doesn't even matter what level of activity you were really involved with on a political level, so long as you protested against something that the Trump administration is pushing or advocated for, well, we're going to come after you. That's really what it looked like to me. So this intimidation tactic runs throughout the entire system, from green card, whether it's a green card holder to international students. It's just that whole campaign of fear that started so very early on, and it continues until today. But I'm glad to hear about the success stories that your clients actually faced. They were restored, right? And now the big push is, well, Harvard, right? There's something happening at Harvard University. They are actually pushing back on the Trump administration's attempt to go after international students who they typically enroll. What's going on at Harvard, and why should we pay attention to it?
There's an attack on Harvard from multiple levels. They're attacking grants, they're attacking their admissions policies. But from the immigration point of view, they're trying to take away Harvard's ability to enroll foreign students. And that affects the undergraduate college. It affects the law school, the medical school. Harvard is a flagship. It's one of the most famous schools in the world. And it's really part of American business. Have many, many universities around the country that a lot of people pay a lot of money to go to. It's billions and billions of dollars. And they're also renting apartments. They're buying their books. They're buying dinners and lunches. Really a big thing for American economy. It's a service economy, but it's something you can't get outside the US. You can't get a Harvard degree if you don't come to Cambridge, Massachusetts. So they're really trying to take away Harvard's ability for their SEVIS, I guess it's registration or their SEVIS approval. And if that works, then Harvard cannot issue I-20s. They cannot go to school. So it's a very scary attack, in part because any school that were to resist the Trump administration, they might lose 20% of their revenue, 35% of their revenue. And from the business in America, a lot of our engineers, a lot of our STEM graduates, especially from graduate schools, are foreign students who want to come here. They want to do optional practical training. They want to get an H-1B, a green card, and naturalization, and they want to pursue their own American dream in the US. So it's really having a ripple effect on universities, on local university towns, on businesses. And students are looking at Canada, they're looking at Australia, they're looking at the United Kingdom, they're looking at branch campuses of US schools overseas in Abu Dhabi. The chilling effect you talked about with free speech is also trickling down into whether or not people feel safe putting their children into school in America for 4 years or 6 years or 7 years.
Exactly. And then along those lines, we also see the State Department demanding the social media handles of international students as part of the visa application process. And for a period of time, they paused the routine interviews at U.S. embassies and consulates across the globe so that they can put these new demands or restrictions or questions in place. And students across the world were nervous about whether they would be able to get their visa in time to enroll in the fall semester. And so interviews are happening, of course, but there's just a greater level of scrutiny on international students, which, I think is something that we need to continue to watch, at least for us at McBean Law, to really pick up on anything that could potentially be going on with respect to the decision making on these F1 student visa applications based on social media issues. I haven't heard anything. I don't know if you've heard from other lawyers that students are being unfairly targeted or refused of the visa.
No, I'm doing delay lawsuits, so writ of mandamus lawsuits on student delays.
Yeah.
I'm not seeing people getting denials. I'm just seeing the 221G, we call it a soft refusal. What used to take 2 or 3 months and people would be into the US for their fall semester, now it's taking a year and a half. And if you're Iranian and you had, conscription, if you were forced to serve in the Iranian military, you might be waiting 2 or 3 years to get your visa. So you're basically postponing your start date. Or I had a student in Philadelphia, he left about halfway through his undergraduate engineering school. I think he's been outside the US now for about a year and a half. He just got his visa yesterday or the day before. So people are getting their visas, but it's taking 12 months, 16 months, 20 months. They're stuck. And if they can't do the school remotely from their home country, it's really causing a big problem. And it's delay, not denial. And I think that's meeting the Trump administration's goal of just reducing immigration by slowing it down.
Yeah, the fear, frustration, and delays. That's what it's all about.
Maybe
Yeah.
you're doing a different school in your home country on something different, but you're not getting to your career in the 4 years you expected. You're getting to your career in 6 years or 7 years. So it's causing a lot of turmoil for a lot of people. And the judges are agreeing with us. They are denying motions to dismiss, saying, no, I think 12 months in your unique situation is too long. And that's what the judge in Philadelphia said. I wouldn't sue after 2 months. But after you missed a semester of school, I think it's time to talk to a lawyer and talk about doing a lawsuit.
What about USCIS? Are you going after USCIS or have been part of any lawsuits that involves any issues at USCIS? Because we have seen some disruptions. Their tactics at USCIS these days, it's all, in my opinion, more on the law enforcement side of things, right? We see a lot of cooperation and coordination with ICE. But have you done anything with respect to litigating against USCIS, aside from mandamus cases, of course?
Every week. So USCIS, they're detailing USCIS adjudicators to FDNS and to ICE, and they're doing enforcement. So things are slowing down. That's their goal. But there are also a lot of denials.
What's FDNS, for those who don't know what FDNS is?
Fraud Detection National Security Directorate. That's the law enforcement part of USCIS. And USCIS is not law enforcement. They're benefits deciding agency. But they have people internally that look for fraud, and they will refer that to ICE or to U.S. attorneys' offices. So beyond the delays, there are more denials than we've seen in a couple of years. And there's a ping pong match that has gone on over the last, 3 administrations. Trump would get rid of the prior deference memo where USCIS said, hey, if we approved your L1 before, if we approved your O1 petition before, we're not going to revisit that and come to a different decision. We're going to honor that decision. Trump got rid of it. Biden brought it back. Trump got rid of it again. So now you're seeing people that have had 2 or 3 L1 approvals, 2 or 3 H1B approvals. Now they're denying those cases. And we're suing in federal court saying, no, they're being arbitrary and capricious under the Administrative Procedure Act. And the judges are coming down in 2 different ways. If USCIS is really being out of line, they will say that this is arbitrary capricious. You made the wrong decision. If it's close call, they're saying that USCIS is allowed to take back that memo on prior deference and that the courts are not going to make them honor a Biden administration approval of a visa petition under the Trump administration. So if you've had a series of approvals and you get a bad denial, you should talk to a lawyer and see if a lawsuit is possible. But Trump is winning some of those and we're winning some of those. It's not one way or the other 100%.
Now, should more immigration lawyers get involved in litigation? And if so, how can they get started?
Absolutely. I think every lawyer like you, if you have a practice that encompasses family immigration, business immigration, human rights immigration, some removal work. Even now, people that have EB-5 cases that have what's called an I-829, these are people that are green card holders, but they're conditional green card holders. They're now getting denials of their green card conditional status, and they're being referred to immigration court. So people that have done only EB-5 investment now have clients who need removal defense lawyers.
Yeah.
So I think now it's to the point where every immigration lawyer, even if they can't do a lawsuit by themselves, they need to understand the basics and how to work with their co-counsel. So I work with lawyers across the country. I think the best way to learn, in my experience, is hands-on. You have a client who has a problem. There's about 20 or 30 of us around the country that do a really high volume of immigration litigation. So I think the idea is just help the clients you already have. And if you like it, enjoy it, then you can expand your practice and do more cases, not just from your client pool. You can get cases that are coming to you from outside of your law firm.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. And I'll just share the story of how I actually met you. I didn't share this earlier,
I'm
but
blushing.
a few years ago, we were looking for an attorney to help us with a mandamus. I forget where the jurisdiction was at the time. We weren't obviously licensed to practice in that federal court. And so I was connected to a lawyer in Maryland, in the Baltimore area. I said, "Hey, do you know anyone who can help us with this mandamus? It's in such and such district court." And he said, there's a guy, there's a guy who I met through AILA, the American Immigration Lawyers Association, who he's barred in so many jurisdictions. You should reach out to him. And certainly that's how I met Brian. He gave me your contact information, and you were terrific to work with, just terrific. You're very much involved in AILA. I know that you also do presentations and CLEs and other
Mhm.
things like that, correct? Just to close us out a little bit, should we feel hopeful, Brian, from your standpoint? Should our viewers feel hopeful that we're winning the fight? It's hard seeing the challenges from all sides of things, right? Should they feel any degree of hope? Is litigation helping? Is it working? Should we continue fighting?
Yeah,
What
it
would you
does.
say?
Litigation works. The hope I have and the confidence and the faith I have is that Trump can't change the immigration law. He's changing how it's executed, how it's applied, how benefits are approved. But if you already have a green card, as long as you don't get in trouble with criminal law, you're probably okay. They can't change the law without Congress passing a new law to replace the old one. And that hasn't happened since 1996. We're talking, 30 years almost now. So I think that immigration law probably won't change fundamentally in the next 4 years. There's ups and downs in how we deal with the government, but litigation does work. And I think it's a good example is that back in April, the Trump administration, USCIS, tried to change all the immigration forms without letting anyone know. And American Immigration Lawyer Association, and I'm the chair of the Benefits Litigation Committee for a second year, we filed a lawsuit on Friday. I think we got the lawsuit ready and filed it within 24 or 30 hours. And by Monday morning, the government had updated the USCIS website saying, no, we're actually going to take the old forms for the next 60 days. They basically agreed to have a transition period. So litigation works at the macro level. It also works really well for the individuals. The government can do whatever it wants, but we defend people's rights. The judges have the final say. And those judges are appointed for life in America. And even if they're a Trump judge, they may come out and say, no, government, you're doing the wrong thing. So I think the judges are the last protection against the USCIS and ICE and DHS and State Department trying to do too much or go beyond their power. So I know I'll be busy for the next 3.5 years,
Yeah,
but
that's
I
for
don't.
sure.
Yeah, and as you are, but we're not going to have a country with no immigrants. It's not going to go that way. We just
Right.
have to endure the next 3.5 years.
Exactly. And the courts have been stepping up and defending liberty, defending due process. Yes, there's a Supreme Court that from time to time gives us decisions that we don't really like, but it doesn't mean that we shouldn't keep fighting, keep pressing on, and just keeping the faith. And Brian, I always like to end my podcast when I have a guest on the show with a quote just to kind of frame things for folks a little bit. And this quote comes from George Washington, and it's part of his first inaugural address, April 30th, 1789. Well, he said, "The preservation of the sacred fire of liberty and the destiny of the Republican model of government are justly considered deeply, perhaps as finally staked on the experiment entrusted to the hands of the American people. It's up to us. It's up to you, viewer or listener. It's up to us, certainly as immigration attorneys. It's up to all of us to collectively work together, whether it's on the community level or in the courtroom or, just in our own homes, just educating our family about due process and the Constitution and liberty. We have to work collectively together to hold it together, right? Because there's no other country like America, in my opinion. So, Brian, thank you so much for being with me today and being with us today. How can folks find you? I know you're not a big social media personality, so to speak. You're behind the scenes doing the real important work, but where can they find you if they need to find you and certainly to follow your work?
I do have a website. It's greenusimmigration.com. My email address is there. I think my phone number is listed there. So people can reach out. I'm on LinkedIn and Facebook. I'm old fashioned that way. Find me through my website. I appreciate being invited. You're very inspirational. Thank you for the
Right.
invitation. This has been a lot of fun.
Thank you so much. That's wonderful. Guys, thanks so much for joining us in this one. Be sure to comment below and I will see you in the next one. Bye-bye.